As we continue our series on the shifting workplace, our conversation takes us from what employees want to the needs of their managers. A Gallup poll revealed about 32% of employees prefer to work entirely remotely, and 59% say they prefer a hybrid role. 9% only say they prefer to be fully on site. Meanwhile, the Society for Human Resource Management found 72% of supervisors prefer their employees to return to the office. That gap has left managers trying to bridge the divide by building a culture that works for everyone. Joining me now to offer his take is Oscar Munoz, the former chairman and CEO of United Airlines. He's also the author of an upcoming book, Turnaround Time: Uniting an Airline and Its Employees in the Friendly Skies. It will be on bookshelves in May. Oscar, thank you for being with us. You were CEO until just the start of the pandemic, but give us your thoughts on how CEOs are thinking about bringing employees back now that they're doing so at the third year of the pandemic.
You know, thank you, John, for having me. I appreciate it. I think it is a very widely discussed topic, as we all know, and I think there are many approaches to it. I think some of the key learnings that we've had over time is, first and foremost, the shift to a more flexible workspace was already beginning way before the pandemic, right? We were already beginning to talk about that. Certainly the pandemic accelerated that, and that has been a significant thing. And we are learning and trying to figure out how to, from a culture perspective, how you go from presentism as a performance measurement to actual results as a performance. Because it used to be how long you were in the office and all that has all shifted completed. We're also learning, I think, with regards to, the concept of communication. We pay a lot of lip service to that and collaboration. We use these terms. Now it's so much more critical for managers to be able to do that because you have to collaborate and communicate not only with your employees, which days are you coming in the office? Are we going to come in the same days that the peers we work for? So I think in an irony of ironies, for the less time we spend in the office nowadays has forced us all to make sure that the time we do spend in the office is not only well spent, but spent with a purpose. And so it's an interesting sort of development for all of us that we probably should have talked about way before this.
Yeah, to be more intentional about the time we spend together. So I want to link that to the famous Peter Drucker quote, which I know you have used, that culture eats strategy for breakfast or for lunch, depending on if you're really hungry. That quote, how does that apply to what you've just been describing, the opportunities in this moment of workplace shifting to build new culture and to use the power of culture to create a working environment that's productive for the company?
It is so true. My colleagues at Brookings have done a lot of work on this, and so have several other people. But I think one of the general aspects of the studies have shown that if you have existing relationships with other humans, you tend to be able to maintain them in this new virtual world. Building new relationships and new levels of trust with people that you've never really met is a little bit more difficult. And I think with regards to this concept of culture, eating everything you do, it's a strategy. The very real important part is, in order to get aligned on a strategy, in order to execute, it requires so much communication, so much collaboration, and so much practice. And part of that is being around people and seeing them. So leadership is the other thing that leaders have to learn how to adapt to this new culture. This pandemic has shifted how everything is done by necessity. But now that it's here, how do you, in fact, figure it out, how to build new habits, new rituals, new performance measurements to be able to get that trust and collaboration? Because, again, when the pandemic is behind us, there will be new things in the future. And if you find a company whose culture and its togetherness has been disbanded or a little disenfranchised because of the way we're working, we don't see each other, we don't know each other, I find that you might face some more dire consequences of upcoming issues that we might face as an industry.
Well, one of the reasons we were so anxious to talk to you is you, in fact, experienced this when you came into United Airlines. There was no pandemic, but you were coming in, trying to build a new culture, trying to turn things around. To make this idea of culture concrete for people who are listening, give us some examples of when you did that in the past. That we might understand these ideas of communication and culture building that need to be applied now in this post-pandemic workplace.
So as everyone knows, the airline industry is one of those essential worker categories where I remember a customer once saying later on in the pandemic how excited he was to be, around people in a plane. And I gently reminded him that the people that were there servicing us had never left the airplane, had continued to work through that process. But this concept of culture and building it and structuring, you're right. When I came into United, it was a fairly disenfranchised and disengaged organization for many, many reasons that we will go into here. My way of connecting with them was to listen, learn, and then lead. And the concept of listening was in their place. So I went everywhere in our organization, all hours in the night, to make sure that I could sit and listen and talk to people face to face and really listen to their input, listen to their concerns, and also be able to sort of reply back. And, indeed, initially, it was just seen as just another corporate exercise of somebody walking around pretending. But over time, if you do listen and learn from it, and then do the right things from a leadership perspective, that's how we begin to build a culture of re-engagement and re-energize about moving towards the strategies we eventually developed, which was growing the market and growing our markets, growing our business, buying new aircraft, flying a whole bunch of different places. That would have never happened without the support of the employees. And the book, that you discussed, talks a lot about that turnaround and how that was so critical to us. In an environment of virtual space, it would have been very difficult for me to go out and do that level of connection with our employees.
We're out of time, but if you were still in the CEO chair and somebody came to you and said, we'd like a 4-day work week, what would you say?
I think I'd be very open, depending on how everyone was going to position it, how we were going to communicate and collaborate, on how people work together across the organization, not just in your own department. It's not as easy as the number of days. Policies won't bring people home. Building a magnetic place that the employees want to come to and work and they can gain benefit from, that's what's going to make the difference.
Oscar Munoz, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.